How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for April 15th through April 22nd of 2019. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and commenting and sharing and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm so glad you can be here because this week is going to be really refreshing and honestly a lot more exciting than the past couple of weeks, because some of this week's highlights that we got going on is on Tuesday, we're having Mercury leaving shadow and entering Aries. And I don't have to tell you guys, with Mercury being in retrograde and in Pisces for the past 2 months, it's been hard to get that Mercury side of us, how our mental energy is, our mindset, what we're thinking about, making plans and just getting things straight across the board, getting things clear. It's been pretty difficult. But now as Mercury is leaving Pisces, where it's in detriment, it's going to go into Aries, where things are going to start to look a lot more clear. Things are going to be very blunt. Things are going to be very direct, which is going to be very needed after this very confusing and unclear Mercury retrograde in Pisces. This week, we also have on Friday the second full moon in Libra, right before the sun moves into Taurus, right before the moon moves into Scorpio and opposes Uranus right after that full moon. The second full moon is definitely, still highlighting, that other full moon that we were talking about. I talked a lot about that in my monthly horoscopes, but, we had the Aries new moon. Well, first we had the full moon in Libra, then the new moon in Aries. Now this is the second full moon in Libra, so there's a lot of highlighting going on in this axis between Aries and Libra, and this is that last kind of like lunation, that last light up of that axis for the next little while until we go into Libra season. As well, the next day, on Saturday, we have the sun moving into Taurus, and we have Venus moving into Aries. While the sun's in Taurus, this is definitely going to be a little bit more exciting than usual, because also on Monday, we're having the sun conjoin Uranus. This is very electrifying. But Venus is going to move from her sign of exaltation, of Pisces, into her sign of detriment of Aries, because it's the opposite of Libra. Now, in Libra, or Venus rules Libra, in case you didn't know that. But this week's definitely, a lot of the energy's changing. A lot of things are going into, we have Mercury going into Aries, we have Venus going into Aries. There's a lot of fire energy going on this week. And as well, we're going to have the moon going into Sagittarius by the end of this week. And so by the time we get to this video next week, we're going to have this electrifying sun-Uranus conjunction. Venus will be in Aries, Mercury will be in Aries, trining the moon in Sagittarius, along with Jupiter there too. So I really do think that this week's going to kind of take us to a new direction. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the horoscope. I also wanted to mention, before I forget, this Thursday I am going to be releasing a new video series that I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. So make sure you guys check that out and be aware, on Thursday I'm going to be making a new post. It's going to be something completely new, and I hope it really helps you guys, and I hope you like it. So just make sure you stay around and stay tuned for that. But anyway, let's go into the horoscope. So starting off today on Monday, the April 15th, we're going to have the moon in Virgo, and we're going to have Venus squaring Jupiter. And I talked a lot about this last week with Venus being in Pisces. We're being open to what we want things to look like. Venus is, that planet of value, that planet of expression, that planet of bringing things together. And when she's in the sign of Pisces, she has all of the capabilities and the tools that she needs to do that. She kind of can just make anything up as she goes along. Well, with Venus squaring Jupiter, Jupiter here in Sagittarius is wanting to make this more philosophical, have more of a bigger vision with this. And while Venus is squaring Jupiter, while also in Jupiter's sign, this is kind of like, if we want to create this art piece, how big are we making it? What's realistic? And what is our vision with that? Now, with the moon being in Virgo on Monday, we are going to be kind of, it could be easy to get analysis paralysis and kind of overthink things, but this is also just going to be a good time to really get down with the details of what it is that you're trying to create. Get down to the details of that vision that you're looking to, kind of fulfill in your life in a sense. This is Venus. She's wanting to bring harmony and joy into things. And as, she's squaring Jupiter, it's kind of like, how big can we make it versus, how big is it in our head versus how big is it going to be in reality? Now, as we move forward into Tuesday on April 16th, this is when we got a lot going on. We're going to have the moon first opposing Venus. It's going to oppose Mercury. It's going to square Mars. It's going to square Jupiter. So this moon in Virgo's got a lot going on while it's trying to, not only, see Venus, see Mercury, where it's like, hey, I want to get these things done. It's kind of like trying to tell a drunk person, step-by-step actions of how to, pay your taxes or something like that. Like, they're not going to pay attention. They're not listening to that type of stuff. While you also have the moon squaring Mars and squaring Jupiter. So the big thing that I wanted to say about this is that the message may be a little bit overwhelming. The message may be, it's going to be kind of pulled this way, looking at things through this aspect. But also on Tuesday, we're having Mercury leaving shadow and going into Aries. And so I feel like on Tuesday there's going to be a lot of things going on where, everything's kind of attached together, everything's kind of connected together. But at the end of the day, it all kind of comes back down to Mercury moving out of shadow where things were not clear, finally moving direct into new territory, into the sign of Aries, where it can be clear and it can be direct. And this week, you're probably going to start feeling a lot more like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm clear on my thoughts. I'm clear on where my head is. I'm not confused anymore. And this is what I'm trying to initiate. This is what I'm trying to change. This is what I'm going for. This is what I'm, sinking my teeth into is a good way to put it. And so as we move into Wednesday, not a whole lot's happening on Wednesday and Thursday. On Wednesday the 17th, we're going to have the moon go into Libra, where again, this is kind of like bringing in a little bit more of that, energy of Venus, like bringing things together, delegating things, connecting, building bridges. And this week, as we have Mercury getting clear, Mercury's leaving shadow, going into Aries, the moon's going to be in Virgo right before or during that time. The next day is when the moon goes into Libra. This is kind of like, how do we balance out all of this information? How do we balance out everything that we're taking in and everything that's kind of going on with everything else that we've got going on at the same time? The moon in Libra is basically, this is going to be a good time to, now that everything's starting to kind of come up, now that Mercury's clear, it's like, this is a good time to delegate. This is a good time to really find some peace and find some order in the situation that you've got going on, whatever you're trying to start or whatever it is that you're trying to do, something that may be new for you or anything like that. Now, as we move into Thursday on April 18th, the moon is going to start to sextile Jupiter and is going to start to trine Mars right before we have this full moon in Libra. And I think this is exciting because as the moon's now in Libra trying to bring things together, we're starting to get, the moon is now lit up again in Libra. Like, what do we need to connect? What do we need to bridge together? It's going to be sextiling Jupiter, where Jupiter's kind of helping, is kind of giving us some support of like, hey, maybe think big about this. Maybe think a little bit broader. Don't be afraid to go, past the boundaries. And while this is trining Mars in Gemini, where Mars in Gemini is like, feeding off the information, wanting to go this way or that way, kind of being, overwhelmed with everything that's going on, I feel like while the moon's trining Mars, this is going to be a good time to really initiate action with this full moon in Libra that we've got going on the next day, on Friday. So on Friday, what is that, the April 19th, we have the full moon in Libra, the last degrees of Libra, 29 degrees. And what's important about this is that after the moon is full, it's going to immediately enter Scorpio, where it's kind of like with the sun in Aries at the final degree, the moon in Libra at the final degree, it's kind of like finding that balance and bringing the light to like, hey, what am I starting? What am I initiating? What am I confronting versus how do I balance that out? How do I do that? How do I fall in style? How do I do this peacefully? How do I do this with, elegance and grace, almost in a sense? Then when the moon goes into Scorpio on Friday, this is when things are going to get a little bit more intense. The moon is also going to, right as it moves into Scorpio, it's going to oppose Uranus. So this is kind of like, hey, if this is what we're wanting to initiate and this is how we're going to bring balance to it, what do you have to commit to? What do you have to pursue into? What do you have to get your emotionally self-involved with? That's kind of like the moon in Scorpio vibe of like, what's deep, what's real, what's raw, how are you feeling, and what's, worth holding on to and what's worth letting go of. And I think that's going to be the big theme as the moon goes through Scorpio throughout the weekend. Because as we move into the weekend on Saturday, we're going to have Venus move into Aries. So now we have the moon in Scorpio in a Mars sign. Venus is now in Aries in her sign of detriment, also a Mars sign. And we also have the sun moving into Taurus on Saturday. Happy 420. Now, with Venus moving into Aries, this is going to be kind of weird, and I did talk about this in my April horoscopes. However, with Venus being this planet of connection, of value, she's wanting to receive, not necessarily pursue. This is where Venus has to go a little bit counterintuitive in Aries, where, again, Venus is about receiving. Venus in Aries is kind of like pursuing. Like Venus is saying, I want these things, and I'm going to go for these things. And the problem with that is, and this is why she's in detriment in Aries, is that you can't always, force those type of things. You can't always force Venus things. They kind of have to come to you. They kind of have to be a natural flow. So yeah, as Venus goes into Aries, this is kind of like the time to go, hey, what do I want and what am I willing to do to go for that, to achieve that? Going, this is the possession I want to hold on to. This is the feeling that I'm holding on to. I'm feeling sturdy. I'm feeling, justified and righteous in what I'm valuing and what I'm wanting to pursue. Those are good words to use for Venus and Aries. So it's going to feel kind of like instigated. Like, you're going to feel like, you know what, I'm ready to go for this. I'm not necessarily so much about feeling it and embracing it all and questioning what I want. I'm ready for what it is that I want. I'm ready to pursue this. I'm ready to take this on. I'm ready to have it and hold it. Also, while the sun goes into Taurus, now Taurus season begins, everything's a little bit chill, everything's a little bit more calmed down, everything's a little bit more grounded, and that's the sign of Taurus. It's fixed earth. Everything is steady growing. There's nothing really to worry about while the sun's in Taurus is a good way to put it. Now, as we move into Sunday, later on this weekend, we are going to have the moon going into Sagittarius. It is going to trine Mercury and Venus now that they're both in Aries. And I think this is going to be exciting because now that we have Jupiter's retrograde in Sagittarius, this is a really deep philosophical time. While the moon's in Sagittarius, we're wanting to expand and our emotions are, kind of like not necessarily on our sleeves, but our emotions are with the wind. Like, we want to expand and we want to grow. And the moon's going to be trining Mercury and Venus where it's like, yes, this is what I want to pursue and this is what I want to have and this is what I want to do. And the moon in Sagittarius is kind of like hyping us up for that, getting us excited. This is fire energy right now. But then as we go into Monday and we have the sun conjoin Uranus, this is when things get a little bit more electrified. Now, Uranus is in Taurus, again, where Uranus, this planet of not only like liberty and freedom and crazy ups and downs, this is really about, like electrifying, in like creative, sparking of something new and crazy. And while the sun conjoins Uranus, I talked about this also in my monthly horoscopes, it's like, if you haven't felt what Uranus in Taurus looks like yet in your chart, you're probably going to feel it then. But this is also going to be a good time to look at where Uranus and Taurus is at in your chart. And while the sun's on top of it, like initiate something different, initiate change and grow and get something, kind of like do something that's unique and that's a little bit forward thinking, something that's new age. That's kind of like that whole Uranus and Taurus stuff. And then also on Monday, we're going to have the moon conjoin Jupiter and oppose Mars, where this is really about, like, hey, what's a good way to put that? While the moon's conjoining Jupiter and it's kind of like wanting to expand in this area where it's wanting to be more philosophical, have more faith, have a lot of hope and optimism, as it opposes Mars, this is kind of like, all right, which direction are we taking this? We can't just stay up in the clouds all day long. Like, we got to do something now. And I think that's going to be really important as we move into next week, because next week we have Mars squaring Neptune, but we're going to have the South Node conjoin Saturn basically all week. And those are the main events, and we're mostly going to be talking about those, but those are two serious things that I think are going to really play out into big ways later on. But with that being said, that's what I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.